Hello again. I am back. Sorry for the big gap in my YouTube videos and my eBay listings. I had just started a new job, so I was getting acclimated to working full time for the first time in my life. So I am going to be reviewing this camera. This is the Nikon FA. It's a semi-professional advanced level 35mm single lens reflex camera. This camera goes for a good amount of money on eBay because of its following in the film photography community. Not as big of a following as, let's say, a Nikon F3, but still good enough where the price is a bit above what you would expect an old 35mm camera to go for. So today I thought I'd go through the motions of demonstrating how this camera operates. I do not have a scrap roll of film, but I have verified that this camera is film tested. I put a roll of film through the camera and I have verified that all of the metering system and shutter system in the camera works properly. This camera is equipped with a Nikon Series E 100mm f2.8 lens, and the lens is not of used description. It's of 4 parts or not working, because as I demonstrate the lens later, you will see that the focusing ring is extremely stiff and will need to be disassembled in order to be relubricated and work properly. So I am going to first turn the camera on. So technically this camera is always on because this is your mode selection right here. You have your P, S, A, and M modes, your program, shutter priority, automatic, and manual modes. As I explained just a few moments ago, this is an advanced level camera, so you have shutter speeds of 1/4000th of a second all the way down to 1 second with a manual 250 setting and a bulb setting. So first I'm going to stop the lens down. Now the aperture on this lens moves nicely, just the focusing ring is having trouble. So to turn the camera on, all you have to do is open the advanced lever to where it sort of clicks into place, out like that. Then you advance, which I already have, so I'm going to take a picture, 1/4000th of a second. One 2000th of a second, 1/1000th of a second, 1/500th of a second. Oops. I'm sorry. We are on aperture priority or automatic mode. So I have put it to manual and we're going to start that sequence again. This is at 1/4000th of a second. That sounds more like it. 2000th. 1/1000th. 1/500th. 1/250th. 1/125th. 1/60th. 1/30th. 1/15th. 1/8th. 1/4th, 1/2, 1 full second, and your manual 250th of a second, which is operated by moving this button here on the side. you have to push this button on the side in to reach your manual and your bulb modes. So this is manual 250th. And your bulb setting. The lens will stay stopped down until I release my finger from the shutter button. Now, technically we have already tested the meter in this camera, but I'm going to do it again. I have the camera positioned on 4,000th of a second, which does not interfere with the mode setting on the camera. So if you have it in aperture priority mode or automatic mode, they are interchangeable. Just the green mode here. The computer in the pentaprism will overtake the shutter speed that's on the dial here. So I'm going to point this into some light. And you saw a fast shutter speed. I'm going to turn the light off. See how long of an exposure this is. And there we go. So that was a good, I'd say, 8 to 10 second exposure. So we know that the shutter speeds work correctly, and the computer that regulates the automatic shutter speed metering works correctly. Now, this dial here is your double exposure. This will allow you to take double exposures. Be aware that this is always set this way. See? You always want it to be out here. And I'm going to show you the frame counter. Which we can verify is moving along the line correctly, or around the dial that has all the exposure counter numbers on it. This is an advanced hot shoe, so it will take, I would say, the hot shoe compatible flashes from the mid-80s and beyond. So I'll also be aware of that modern day flashes can be used with this because it has the extra attachments. This little lever here, right next to the viewfinder, is a shutter blind. This is very handy if you're taking pictures on a tripod and you don't want the metering system in the camera to meter the light behind your eye when you're focusing or framing up your picture. This is a stop down meter, right, or lever rather, right here, this thing. Press down and you can see that it will stop down the lens for you. This is your self timer. Very healthy self-timer here. And now I'm going to go to the other side of the camera for the viewers here. This is your rewind knob, crank, lever, whatever you prefer to call it. This also has a lock on it right here, just like the Nikon F3. You have to push this back to pull up the rewind knob and then open up the back of the camera. So before we look into the camera to make sure that everything's going smoothly. This is your ISO selection and your exposure compensation, which is moved by this dial here. Now, this is quite difficult to move. This just moves the exposure compensation, whereas this whole dial will move up and you can select the ASA or ISO of the film. So that's that. Now we're going to open up the back of the camera. This is a titanium shutter, as you can see. It is a horizontal, excuse me, this is a vertical shutter. So that works. Pressure plate works, or not works. The pressure plate is in the correct position and it does have a good spring left to it. So not that it works, but it is original in what it was intended to do, which was keep the film against the camera very snug so you don't have those air bubble things showing up on your prints. Well, checking for light seals, I can clearly see some material along the edge of the film door here, but on the camera, these light seals should be replaced, especially the ones on the side here. You can clearly see a complete deterioration of the light seal material on this side. So that should be looked at and replaced immediately. So that is the back of the camera. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the lens off, which is done by this button here and turning clockwise. Now you can see the mirror of the camera, and you can also see that the mirror damper foam needs to be replaced as well. Actually, this damper foam is so dry that some particles have ended up on the mirror of the camera. That will not affect the photos, but it will affect your viewing experience through the viewfinder. So be aware of that. Now moving on to the lens. So the aperture blades are nice and fast and good clicks, but the focusing ring is extremely stiff. So I have to do this to where you can see that I'm really trying to focus this lens, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So I'm not sure if this lens was dropped and the diameter of the lens somehow got crushed or expanded to where the actual focusing ring does not travel smoothly. So that is of extreme importance when you're looking over the photos and the description in the eBay listing. But overall, it is a very good lens if you can get it working properly. This lens has a serial number of 1843253, and it is a Series E. So it will work with your FG, the FA, basically any camera that has this attachment right here, similar to the Nikon F3 attachment that has the electronic connections. So that's that. This camera also comes with a nice strap that is branded, but it's not original. You can see that there was a misprint in the strap. It says for Nikon, designed for Nikon. So it's kind of some Chinese knockoff Fako strap that is not original to Nikon at all. This looks exactly like a third-party strap that I had on one of the other cameras that I have sold already, that they just printed this on here. So be aware that this is not an original Nikon strap. This is a branded strap that is not original to this camera specifically. Now, I believe this camera was 1986. That was the first production date of the camera. But on the bottom, you can see that there are light scratching, but you have all of your electronic connections and manual connections for the optional motor drive that did maybe 3 frames a second to 4 frames a second. This camera also is missing the grip here, the sports grip they called it. These are the 2 attachments for it. This camera unfortunately is missing this sports grip on the side for your hands when you're gripping it like this. That depreciates the value as well. It is also missing the PC cord, or whatever this socket is for the flash, is what I'm assuming that connection is for, because the shutter release is threaded for a cable release, one of those clickers. So this might just be a socket for a flash. This is just a window for the aperture readout. And this, I don't know if you can tell, but there is a slight crack right on the corner there. Yeah, there you can see it. This is basically part of the computer chip. That crack will not affect the accuracy of the metering at all. As I had said earlier, I had film tested this camera. So everything that is supposed to be working on this camera is working. And it will be listed for sale on my eBay store. Now, I would recommend that all of the viewers check out my eBay listings. Unfortunately, I haven't listed anything on eBay for a bit of time now, but I'm getting back into the swing of things. And this is the first camera that I'm going to be putting up for sale. I had bought this camera, I want to say, almost about 6 months ago now. And I've only used it a few times, but when I did use it, it never failed. It was more advanced, more electronically controlled, and geared toward the type of 80s electronics that you would find in a Minolta X700 or something like that. Not really for the professional who would own a Nikon F3, where you have manual capabilities as well. This was just fully electronic, besides the manual to 50th of a second shutter speed. So this camera is extremely good for the beginner who's getting into film photography, or the intermediate film photographer, or somebody who's taking an advanced film photography class in high school or college. I highly recommend this camera, and I recommend that you check this camera out on my eBay store, where I have it listed for sale. Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to review this camera.